Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will be informing you about the ways of fantasy football. Some things to be learned are how to be a part of a league and ways to better your chances of winning. Have you ever wanted to manage or coach an NFL team? Fantasy football allows you to be both in the comfort of your own home. Fantasy football provides a platform for participants to build and run teams with the players of their choosing. I will be informing you on some things you may or may not know about this high popularity game. The focus will be on how fantasy football works, the basic rules, and some guidelines to follow to have success. The first step to discuss is how to join a league and get started. When it comes to joining a league, there are many websites you can play fantasy football on. Based off opinions of fantasy football participants, the top 3 sites are Yahoo, ESPN, and NFL.com. Deciding on which website to use depends on who you want to play with. You can either play with friends or random people. If you want to play with friends, then you must use the website they have created the league on and accept the invitation they send through your email. If you want to play with random participants in a public league, then you can choose the website of your choice. If you want to play for money, you can do so through public leagues on these websites, or you can do it on the side with your friends. When you join a league, a default name is given to your team. Team names are a big part of most fantasy football leagues. You want to change yours to be funny and have puns, utilizing some NFL players' names. Now that you are part of a league and have chosen a name, it is time to start researching players. Researching players will allow for you to prepare for draft day. Before looking for players of interest, you need to know what type of scoring system the league is set to. The most common are standard scoring and PPR, or points per reception. The scoring systems are very similar with a few differences. For standard scoring, players who score the most touchdowns are more valuable. A June 1st, 2019 article on CheatSheetWarRoom.com states, the points per reception system enhances standard scoring by introducing another statistical category to increase overall scoring. For this scoring, players who get the most targets and receptions are more valuable since they get a point every time they catch the ball, whereas in standard scoring they do not. Once you know the scoring system and which players to target, it's time to do some research on your desired players. When you are researching, you want to look to see how these players performed last year and see if their team added or lost any key players to affect their performance this year. You also want to check on their health and injury updates. When enough information is gained on the players you want to target, your draft preparation is complete. The next step is a big day as a team owner to see what kind of team you are capable of building. On draft day, you find out which pick you have an hour before the draft starts. This allows for you to predict which of your players you have been looking at will be available when it is your turn and allow you to plan accordingly. When it comes to drafting, there are 2 types of draft, snake and auction. A snake draft is where a random drafting order is chosen, and each round the picks snake back around, meaning if you had the first pick in the first round, you would have the last pick in the second round, and so on. A March 11, 2011 article on WindyCityGridiron.com explains that the auction draft is quickly gaining in popularity and is the most strategic of the draft options. This kind of draft consists of players being auctioned off one at a time between all the teams. The team with the highest offer receives that player. Each team only has a certain amount of money or cap space to use, so use it wisely. As you draft, you want to aim to get the most valued players first. As the draft goes on, you then switch to picking players you believe had the most potential this year, or the so-called sleepers. With the later round picks, you want to use your pick on the least important roster spots such as a defense or kicker. Once the draft continues and comes to an end, you now have a team to manage. After the draft, you have some time to proceed with the team you drafted or make some changes. Some ways to make changes are through waivers and trades. Waivers are free agent players who were not drafted and are not on a team. These players can be picked up by anyone, but in order to do so, you would have to drop one of the players you took in the draft. You can utilize the waivers throughout the whole season to pick up players that start to play well and no one has rostered. Each week, the waiver order changes. The waiver order is the order on which teams get first dibs on free agent players. So if someone higher on the order claims a player you also claim, that player gets him over you. Alongside with waiver pickups is trades. If a team has a player you want, you can propose a trade for that player using some of your players. This trade can be seen by everyone in the league, and they have the ability to veto the trade if it seems unfair or allow for it to go through. These ways of managing your team become helpful throughout the season when players start to get injured. Now that you know how to manage your team, it is time to win some games. The biggest tip to winning is staying active on the waiver wire daily. People in the league add and drop players weekly, and this is a place where you can find diamonds in the rough, such as rookies who no one drafted because no one knew who they were. The next few tips come from looking at your players' profiles each week. The first thing is checking your player's matchup. On your player's profile, it will show the opponent's ranking against their position, and will be highlighted red or green depending on if it's a good or bad matchup. The players with green matchups have a better chance of putting up more points than those with red. Next, you check for the game day conditions. On their profile, there is a symbol for what kind of weather they will have during their game, or it will have a dome symbol if they are playing indoors. This allows for you to see if players are playing in rain or the cold, the two weather conditions that have the biggest impact on the game. Next, reading the Players Update tab. Under this tab, you will find updates on how your players performed last week, as well as if they missed practice due to injury or are returning from injury. You will find advice from fantasy experts on whether to start or sit them each week and how much points they anticipate the player to score. Lastly, checking your league matchup is critical. Each week you play a different person in the league. You can see which players you are playing against and can plan accordingly. Let's say you are playing against the number one scoring fantasy quarterback one week, and you have the defense that quarterback is playing against. It would be a good move to go on the waivers to see if you could pick up a better defense you could use that week. This is a smart move because every time that quarterback would score a touchdown, your defense would lose a point. This shows why waivers are so important. Not only can you make your team better, but you can find replacements in emergency situations as well. With these tips, you will have some assistance in deciding which players to start each week when you're stuck between a few players. You now have a basis to what fantasy football is and how to go about participating as a team owner. Overall, the process of joining a league is simple. Once doing so, building a good team takes some skill that builds upon experience of playing. When you get a few years of experience and if you follow the tips to winning, your success in the league will start to increase. Though it takes some time to become a fantasy football guru, I believe everyone is capable of success and having fun.